The European Union is weighing one of its boldest financial strategies yet, a reparations plan that would channel frozen Russian state assets into a massive loan package for Ukraine. The proposal, worth about $164 billion, is designed to help fund Ukraine's reconstruction once the war with Russia ends. The idea was first put forward by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in September and has since gained momentum, especially as the United States signals it will scale back support. With Washington under Donald Trump's leadership pulling back from Europe's security commitments, many EU leaders now believe Europe must fill the gap. At a summit in Copenhagen, leaders expressed both enthusiasm and caution. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said she strongly supports the idea, while Sweden's Ulf Kristersson declared himself very much in favor. But Belgium's Prime Minister Bart de Wever voiced concerns about the legal and financial risks, noting that since most frozen assets are held in Belgium, his country should not shoulder all the liability if the plan fails. So how would it work? Since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, about $300 billion of Russian central bank assets have been frozen worldwide. The vast majority, $247 billion, is in Europe. Of this, some $217.5 billion, mostly in cash, is managed by Euroclear, a Belgium-based capital markets company. These assets are already generating revenue. Euroclear reported $3.2 billion in interest for the first half of 2025, down from $4 billion during 2025, the same period in 2024. The EU plan would use these frozen holdings as collateral for Ukraine's loan. Repayments would come from eventual war reparations expected from Russia. To reduce risk, the loan would be guaranteed through the EU's next long-term budget or directly by member states. But legal questions remain unresolved. International law generally protects sovereign assets from seizure, making this plan highly controversial. Luxembourg's Prime Minister Luc Frieden called it a difficult legal question, asking how repayment would work if Russia refused reparations or if no peace treaty was ever reached. Experts argue, however, that Europe has few alternatives. With US aid waning, Ukraine needs more than $100 billion annually. Without European action, Ukraine could face collapse, which would bring catastrophic consequences, including mass migration of millions of Ukrainians into Europe and a rapid push for rearmament. Indeed, NATO members pledged in June to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. If Ukraine falters, that timeline could accelerate dramatically, forcing governments into higher deficits, greater borrowing, and weaker economic growth. Russia has angrily denounced the EU proposal. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov branded it outright theft and warned that anyone involved would be prosecuted in one way or another. He added that the move would damage Europe's investment climate and hinted Moscow could seize Western assets in retaliation, but analysts say Russia's leverage is limited. While Moscow claims it holds around $288 billion in foreign assets that could be seized, most belong to Chinese, Indian, or Middle Eastern investors, not Western governments. Western holdings in Russia are far smaller than the Russian assets frozen abroad, leaving Moscow more vulnerable. Ultimately, the reparations plan underscores the growing financial front in the war over Ukraine. With $164 billion potentially in play, the EU must balance legality, politics, and urgency. Supporters argue it is the only realistic way to sustain Ukraine as US aid declines. Critics counter that it could set a dangerous precedent in international law by undermining sovereign immunity. What is clear is that the decision will have consequences well beyond Kyiv. For Europe, this is about more than rebuilding Ukraine. It is about securing its own stability in a world where Russia's war shows no signs of ending.